Hey there, folks, and welcome to another episode of Crit Hit Interviews. I'm Arlian, and today we have a returning guest, since I was fortunate enough to get back in touch with Dave Szymanski, whose indie project Iron Lung has recently hit the news, given its transition to the silver screen, courtesy of a collaborative project with Markiplier.
Hi, that's me.
Yeah. Now, you've already been on the show before when I talked to you about, well, Iron Lung the game, Chop Goblins, dabbled a little bit in Dusk, and I imagine some people, though, might not be as familiar with you and just what you do in your body of works, so tell us a bit about yourself.
My name is David Szymanski. I'm an indie game developer, and I've made a whole bunch of different games. Some horror stuff. I tend to veer on the side of shorter horror games. That's a lot of what I've made. So, like, I guess some of the notable ones people might know me for would be like Finger Bones, The Moon Sliver, Squirrel Stapler, Iron Lung, of course, and Dusk, which is kind of not quite the same sort of game, but and most recently Chop Goblins, which is not horror at all. But those are kind of the main things I've done. Yeah, I think that about covers it.
I mean, Chop Goblins is almost horror in the way that Gremlins is.
yeah, it's very it is very Gremlins inspired. So yeah, similarly.
I hope you enjoy what we did to the car scene.
Yes, that was great.
But yeah, I guess the other thing, my one friend actually was playing Squirrel Stapler recently. He was just like, "What is even happening?"
That's correct. that's the correct takeaway from Squirrel Stapler.
I mean, he's just like, I think the dude's just hallucinating because he was eating dead squirrels that were eating poisoned grass, and I'm just thinking like, I don't.
That's one interpretation. That's not my interpretation of it.
Yeah, I was gonna be like, I think maybe there might be some credits for why it gets so fucked up, maybe, but I don't think that explains everything.
Yeah, no, everything I've ever made is 100% happening in that universe, in whatever universe it takes place in. I don't know if I'd ever do something where it's like, oh, the character was just hallucinating it. I don't know. That's just not. I don't like that.
I mean, it works if you eventually get a proper reveal on it, and then to deal with the aftermath.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain stories where it works in. It's just, I don't know that. I won't say never because things change, but no, anything I've done up to this point is like, well, I guess with the exception of A Wolf in Autumn. That's my one. Everyone gets their one. Like it was all a dream story, and that's mine.
that was yours.
That's my one get out of jail free.
Complete with purple prose. That was
oh yeah, yeah, lots of that.
But okay,
that's not going away anytime soon. I'm always like, yeah. And then I like write something. It's like, oh, it's super like over the top poetic again. I guess okay, sure. Like even the one note in Iron Lung. It's like that's just how I write, I guess.
I mean, I can't judge you in the slightest. I do not write anything published for that reason. But so the thing that's interesting about the project you've recently helped work on.
Which one?
Yeah, that's wait. There's two. There's Wait, right. There's Gloomwood, but I'm meaning the film endeavor.
Right. Okay, yeah, the big one.
So, the big one. Yeah. I'm sort of curious in this case because you just hopped genres of media entirely. Like, what is your favorite genre and style of film?
It's pretty like on the same lines of my taste in games, really, which is that I like horror and I like action. And that's what I tend to gravitate toward in horror, and not horror in film. Is horror and action.
Yeah, fair enough. In that case, what were the last movies that really just got your attention insofar as those genres?
Oh, let's see. It's honestly been a little while since I watched um, anything that new, and especially stuff that really jumped out to me. And that's really just a time thing. Where I haven't. I don't end up watching a lot of movies, probably compared to other people, just because I have limited time. I have a family, I have a job where I make games, and so usually my free time is sort of at the end of the day, and I've got a couple hours to myself, and that's when I get to choose. Okay, do I want to watch a TV show? Do I want to watch a movie? Do I want to play video games? Do I want to do something else? Um, so that anyway, long story short is that yeah, I don't think I've really watched. Oh, I feel like there's a big. Oh yeah, there. Okay, so I saw both Skinamarink and what was that? The Outwaters, because I'm a big found footage fan, and both of those are. I mean, Skinamarink isn't found footage, but it's kind of that aesthetic adjacent. Was really let down by the Outwaters, honestly. Skinamarink I thought was really interesting. But some stuff I didn't like about it. But I guess that would probably be the most notable recent one that I've seen. Oh, and also after Iron Lung wrapped, I went and I just for some reason I got on a huge Evil Dead kick, and I've binged.
Oh, hell yeah.
I've been binging like Evil Dead stuff. So I watched, all the original movies. I watched the remake, and I've been watching Ash vs. Evil Dead. So, and yeah, all that's great. I love Evil Dead.
I mean, I love it too. I'm just right now waiting for like the big lawsuit that'll eventually hit Steam, because there is the like basically shot for shot indie game that rips the entire movie.
Oh, what's that?
I think it's Evil is Back. Let me check.
Evil is Back, huh?
Yes, it is Evil is Back. I'm going to shoot you a link just so you can be like, this doesn't look like an homage. This is just because it is not an homage, and
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, I might buy this actually. Oh my goodness, you're right. This is just a straight ripoff.
Mm-hmm.
It's $2.
Yeah, it's a $2 ripoff. It is.
Well, heck, I'm gonna buy this. Why not?
Oh yeah, feel free to give your thoughts.
Oh, this looks this looks very low budget, which is exactly what a Evil Dead ripoff should be. Yeah, I'm gonna give that a look, because I've actually been thinking about that like recently. It's like, man, why is there no just
there was one for Dreamcast?
Yeah, there were like yeah, I think there were like 2 or 3 back in the day. One of them is a Resident Evil style game, but apparently it's really bad. But yeah, I'm just like, man, I just want to play like some sort of schlocky Evil Dead single player game.
Well, there you
go. Not whatever the new multiplayer one is. Like, I'm just like, I don't have any interest in multiplayer horror games. I just want to play some sort of, I don't know, Evil Dead first person survival horror FPS or something, which is what this looks like. I'm sure this will not be very good, but I'm going to play it anyway. Anyway,
let me know your thoughts on it later.
Yeah.
But yeah, so sort of veering back on topic though, is this going to be your first foray into filmmaking or being a part of the process of it?
Yes. Yeah, I've had nothing to do with film before this.
And like having now been a part of it, like, is it something you're excited to dive back into, maybe with some of your other IPs?
Yeah, although Iron Lung is the one thing I've made where I was like, this would make a really cool movie. And it happened to be, serendipitous that Mark apparently had the same thought and approached me about making a movie. But honestly, nothing else I've done is something where I think about it and I'm like, yeah, that would be that could be something cool to make into a movie. Second on the list is like really far down is maybe Squirrel Stapler. And of course Chop Goblins, but I mean Chop Goblins is literally just Gremlins. Like it's already a movie.
Yeah, I'm just sad we're never getting a third one.
Yeah,
Are we?
third Gremlins?
Yeah.
I think we are. Yeah, no, I think that's in production, isn't it?
I don't remember because I'm waking up still.
Gremlins. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's Gremlins 3. Yeah.
Oh my god. Thank God.
Yeah,
well, I
what's it?
mean, it depends if it's a thank God or not. It could be terrible.
Oh, Chris Columbus is one of the writers, apparently.
I think one of my favorite schlocky ones is Critters.
I've never seen Critters.
It's
I know
fun.
there's a bunch of, like... Honestly, I did Chop... I probably talked about this on the last interview, I can't remember, but I did that before I'd even seen Gremlins. Like, I started work on Chop... That was the reason I went and watched Gremlins, is because I'm like, maybe I should see this since I'm making a game that's, like, a rip-off of Gremlins. Anyway, so I don't know that there's any other... Like, there's been, you know, talks behind the scenes about, like, a Dusk movie. They haven't gone anywhere as of yet, but that could work. But that's one where I'm like, sure, I mean, I'd love there to be a Dusk movie, but I creatively don't have any interest in that. Like, nothing about Dusk to me is like, wow, I'd really love to be part of making a movie about that. It's just like, if someone else, you know, if we got a director or whatever and it was like, hey, you know, let's make a Dusk movie, and they were able to run with it creatively, then, you know, that's awesome. It's just me personally, the only one that I was like, oh, that'd be really cool to make that into a movie was Iron Lung. And that happened. But I do actually, I have been thinking semi-seriously about the idea of trying to do a bit more in film. And it wouldn't be, it very likely would not be something like, oh, I want to, you know, write a script and go pitch it to a studio and stuff like that. It would be more like I want to try making my own super low budget indie film, because that's just how I work. Like, if opportunities like Dusk with New Blood or like the Iron Lung movie and stuff, if those didn't end up coming my way, they're not something that I would be going out and seeking, because my default is always just I'm gonna go scrape together whatever I can and try and make it with minimal resources and, you know, minimal people or whatever.
So yeah, we can maybe one day expect someone to help put together like a schlocky grindhouse Dusk movie, but that's not a priority.
Yeah, well, if I were gonna do it, if I were to like head up doing another foray into film, it would not be of one of my games. It would be an original, like, script that I'd write for making a film. Not, you know, I don't think there's anything else that I would personally want to be as creatively involved in adapting as I am with Iron Lung.
All right. Also, is there just any other like experimental shifts in format or media we might be able to expect, like a Chop Goblins comic or a Gloomwood novella or anything of the sort?
Maybe, but not from me.
Okay.
Those would be in the category of like, if we licensed in the case of Chop Goblins, if I licensed it out. In the case of Gloomwood, if we licensed it out. You know, I think that'd be awesome, but it would not be something that I would head up as my own creative endeavor.
Yeah, all right. So I think that's answered a lot about the who you are, some of the behind the bits. But let's actually get into like what I pitched you, which is to talk shop about Iron Lung as a movie, because this is, again, pretty exciting grounds for an indie game to be transitioned to such a mainstream audience. So I guess the first question that I really wanted to get to is, how did the pitch happen?
It was literally just Mark sending me a DM being like, hey, I love your games, do you want to make an Iron Lung movie? Like, that was literally it. There was a bit more, because, and I talked to him about this recently, or he talked to me about this, where he said he just wanted to go in immediately with like, hi, I'm Markiplier, do you want to make an Iron Lung movie? And then other people were telling him, no, you can't just lead with that. You gotta, like, you know, like ease them into that idea. But yeah, it was literally just he played Iron Lung, and I guess it stuck with him, and it just happened to coincide with this idea of him wanting to do a feature film. The two things just happened to kind of happen at the same time, and so he reached out to me and was like, "Do you want me to do? Would you be okay with me adapting Iron Lung into a film?" And of course, I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." I like Mark is a very talented creator and actually a extremely good actor. People are going to see that in this movie. So there wasn't really any creative like what I'm trying to say is like even if it were like this movie would turn out terrible, I probably would have still said yes, because like it would only benefit me to have a movie out. Even if the movie was terrible, it's like, well, it's still gonna give me increased sales. But it luckily it's not going to be terrible, and Mark is extremely good at what he does and does not yet get enough credit, I don't think, because people just associate him as being like, oh, he's the funny YouTube man. But no, he's actually very knowledgeable and very talented, and has so far done a fantastic job of realizing Iron Lung as a good horror movie.
I mean, I'm not actually entirely surprised, because like I know he dabbles in a lot of horror stuff, and that means you get to see a lot of things that work and don't work. And I remember some of his things have nods to horror works, like his big film thing of like that led to like Markiplier in jail has like the Junji Ito nod. That's actually pretty well done.
Yeah, he knows horror very well. I don't know that you can play that many horror games and not absorb, some ideas of like how horror should work.
But yeah, I mean, hey, it sounds like you have a lot of faith in this, so this is good.
Oh, very much. Honestly, I don't like. I mean, we just finished filming, so it's not like it hasn't been edited yet. Hasn't had all the post-production done on it yet, but just based on what we filmed and based on the script that we put together and everything, it's going to be extremely good. Per my tastes, at least. Like I don't think I could imagine a better Iron Lung movie.
Which, on that note, so he asked you this and provided you this pitch. What was your role insofar as the production and the adaptation?
Basically exactly what you'd think for like me being the creator of the original story. He has wanted me to be as closely involved as possible, but with still there being enough room for he is directing, he's funding, directing, and he's written the script for the movie, and he's the main actor in it. So he also needs a lot of room to be able to for him to be creative. So I've been fairly heavily involved, but there's also been a lot of him going off on his own and taking it in his own direction. So the way the process worked for writing the script, for instance, was we had some initial calls and just sort of went over what direction, some basic where should we go with this, and it turned out pretty much from moment one we were basically on the same page about stuff, which I was surprised about, because the vision that I'd always had for an Iron Lung movie I thought was maybe a bit of a hard sell, and I can't really detail that too much yet, because it's a little it's spoilers. Yeah. So my concept, it was this is ideally what I think would be really cool, but I know that's a hard sell. And it turned out that's pretty much exactly what he wanted to do. So throughout really the whole writing process, we were pretty closely on the same page. But I was there sort of as he would. We talked about what's the direction to go with things. And then he would go off and write. And then every so often, every week or two, I think by the end it was fairly regular every week, that he would come back and be like, well, here's what I've written. and here's the direction I think things are going to go from here, and I would give my feedback on that. And most of the time, I had very little feedback to get. I was pretty on board with where he was going with just about everything. Every once in a while, there were a couple instances where I'm like, let's steer the direction more this way or steer away from this, and so that's all. So that's what I mean. That's kind of how the whole process has been, where especially when it got to filming, it's like there needs to be a lot of room for things to happen that I don't have direct control over. Because as it turns out, shooting a movie is extremely complicated, especially compared with making an indie game. And there are lots of moving parts and lots of people involved making those parts moved. So on set, it was not a situation where it'd be like, all right, David, and Mark would be like, come on, David, sit down, let's plan out this next shot or whatever. That was not how it was. In the morning, it's like Mark with like the DP, the gaffer, the sound guys, the art team, everyone sitting around. It's like, okay, here's all the shots we have planned out, so we need to figure out time-wise, when does lighting need to do this, what shots can we get with these two cameras, and what shots, blah blah blah, all this stuff. So it was like, by the time we got to shooting, I was on set for pretty much the entire shoot. There were a few days I missed, but for the most part, I was there for pretty much everything. As a consultant, every once in a while, I would step in and give some feedback. Most of the time, I would air a concern or something, and then it would turn out they'd already thought of that, or there was a reason it had to be that way, or things like that. So I started getting bored, and then I got involved in other areas where it's I'd go to one point I went to the art department. And I'm like, hey, can I just help making props? So I helped make some little props for some things. There's one practical effect that might not even make it into the movie, but I was one of the people who helped. Yeah, I was one of the people who helped make that work. And then in at least the second half of the movie, I'm the one who was always running the proximity lights, because they had a controller, almost like an old video game controller sort of little thing, where you could turn the proximity indicators on and off. So someone, when the scenes are running, had to know what was happening and how the ship, or how the sub was moving and stuff, to know when they would come on and stuff. And so I was usually the person doing that in the second half, and stuff. And I'm also in the movie a little bit. I'm well, you'll see. So yeah, that was kind of how that whole process worked. I was there, and I was heavily involved in the process, but not the one calling the shots. And a lot of the time, I didn't even really need to guide stuff. It's just what everyone was doing was perfect. I guess you could say that the vision in the game is communicated strongly enough that everyone kind of got it and knew what direction it needed to go. And also, the people working on the film were all immensely talented and really wanted to. It seemed like the project as a whole was something that was really exciting for everyone, because it was a big challenge. And it was also just something really unique and different, that everyone in their different ways had a chance to really flex their muscles to problem solve for the unique situation that it was, and kind of get their vision. I know the art department seemed to have a great time with all the different stuff they designed, and just the challenge of designing the sort of set the Iron Lung sub is and stuff.
So in that case, how, I guess, enlightening or educational was it to work alongside Mark, given that he has a very different background insofar as a creator and using mediums?
I think we're actually very similar in some ways. So I feel like there's a common ground just in the fact that we're both extremely driven, creative people. That's Like there's like a common ground there where I'm like, okay, I know how you feel about this. Like
Mm.
I can see him like, okay, I know exactly how that feels to be that, it really inspired and like just hyper focusing in on this project. So, and I think there's an understanding there, but we also do come from very different backgrounds, and I think also have um, very different approaches and experiences with creativity. Because in my case, I'm very much like I mentioned earlier, I like working on small, scrappy things, and I like doing it as much on my own as possible. Like I like describing it as like getting down in the dirt and drawing stuff in the dirt, where it's like I like things real indie and real small, um, and it to have sort of that rough, handmade feel to it. Um, Mark, on the other hand, is works at a much higher level of production and is used to having to work in something of a directorial role rather than a artiste sort of role. So I think that would be the main difference, and it's not like that was like a divisive difference or anything. It's just that like, yeah, his background is very much in like higher production, larger team sort of stuff, and mine is, well, yeah, very indie.
Yeah, no, fair. Um, so here is a question. I'm hoping you can answer this. You've already seemed to imply that this movie is not going to be a direct adaptation of the game itself, because there's sort of things of like it's moving in certain directions. So is it like an alternate retelling, or does it fit somewhere else in the implied universe, like a stealthy sequel or prequel, or just an expansion of things?
No, it's very much like any other sort of video game adaptation, honestly. Like, it's hard to think of an example that isn't going to like sound really bad. But like, okay, imagine if the Rock Doom movie was good. Okay, imagine if that were good. That's what this is like. Where it's like, it's a retelling of the game, but it's just not sticking 100% to, like, it's taking the material from the game and translating it into a different medium. And so on that, like, there's some things that are different. It's like, you can't just take the game as it is and directly film that and have it be a good movie. So it's like some other stuff has to be added, some things needed to be changed a little bit. And so there's some elements of the situation that happens and the world that are different from how they are in the game, and probably different from how any theoretical future follow-up games from the continuity they would follow. So it's just a retelling of the game, but because it's a movie retelling the game, some stuff has to change, and then once some of that stuff changes, it's like, oh, well, other parts of this story, it would make sense to have it be this way instead of this way, et cetera, et cetera.
Which, yeah, actually, I was going to ask, like, so it's going to go in its own direction. So is it going to expand on the established lore for fans? Because there's that neat little lore dump in the final update for Iron Lung, which, set seeds for other things and potentially set the framework for other endeavors, or is stuff in the movie its own separate continuity entirely?
I'd consider it a separate canon, and that's just because of the practicality of, if I were to make another game, or if we were to make another movie, it just honestly may not be practical to keep the canon between those things the same, especially with the differences in some of the nature of the movie. So it's a very faithful retelling of the game in terms of like sort of spiritually, I guess you would say. It's like it sticks very closely to the values of the game, and that includes things like how much of the universe you see and how much is really revealed. Similar to the game, it's not like you're gonna get a gigantic like Wikipedia entry about everything. This is how everything in the universe works. This is why the Quiet Rapture happened, or anything like that.
Mhm.
But because it's an hour and a half long movie, there is maybe a little bit more that you get to experience than what happens in the game.
So, like, between you and Mark, like, how important was it to include nods to certain things from the game itself, including some of the weirdness you encounter?
A lot of that is in there, actually. Not going to say everything, necessarily, but yeah, it's, as I said, it's very spiritually faithful to the game in that the movie is doing as a movie pretty much exactly what the game did as a game, if you think in terms of like the horror and the questions it raises and stuff like that.
Okay. So I guess the next question after that is, simply put, now, you've mentioned like a lot of your thing was sort of like an advisorial role, I guess would be like a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Was there specifically elements that were pulled from cinema when you originally made Iron Lung, like the game itself, which then were in turn influencing the film?
I don't think specifically when I made the game, but when we were going back and forth about the script, there were definitely some cinematic influences that I was pulling from with some ideas. There's one particular thing, man, I don't know how much of this I can talk about without spoilers, but yeah, there's like one or two things specifically that I took from, or I took inspiration from one of my favorite directors to it in suggesting and kind of wanting. Yeah, I can't say too much. I don't think, because then we
Okay.
get into spoiler territory. But there's an element that's added, an element of the situation that's added that Mark has to deal with at a few parts in the movie that's taken from a Shinya Tsukamoto film called Haze. I don't know if it's very like little known, but
I have never heard
Yeah.
of this, so that'll give me, I guess, a research project later to try and parse things.
yeah, it's a really good movie. It's not feature length, but it's basically just a gigantic claustrophobia trigger. So obviously that was a great one to pull from for Iron Lung.
Okay. Now, the original game itself had like this disquieting focus on ambient sound. Does that reflect in the film's soundtrack?
It reflects in everything. Mark holds sound as paramount importance in film, and I think that's actually another one of the reasons he was attracted to this project, is that he really wants to put the sound on center stage for everything. As far as the soundtrack goes, initially I was kind of thinking about, we want to have sound center stage, just like in the game. So probably we're going to go lighter on music than a lot of horror films. So we could just reuse the music from the game. And then I started thinking, it's like, this is gonna be a theatrical release. At least that's what we're aiming for. We're aiming for like real high production sound quality. I don't think that the sound, like my audio engineering, is up to that. Like I just don't know enough about engineering audio. However, I do know someone who knows a lot about engineering audio and is also a composer, and that's Andrew Hulsholt, who did the Dusk soundtrack. And we've been pretty close friends ever since that, and I was like, he's the person that I would trust to, because we worked together for years on Dusk, and we've worked side by side after that. It's like he knows what sort of ambience I like and what sort of atmosphere like my head goes. Like, if there's anyone else who could take the soundtrack ideas from Iron Lung and turn them into a cinematic soundtrack, that would be him. So he's the one doing the music. And that's exactly what he's doing, is he's taken some of the ways that I compose the music and also just the basic sound of the music in the game, and then he's turning that into a more cinematically appropriate score, and it's fantastic so far.
Man, that's really cool though, that it's just more sort of like those indie roots sort of leaking into it.
Yeah. Yeah, and also like he's super easy to work with and very professional. It's like I felt real comfortable recommending him as someone that it's like not only will he do great work, but he's also going to be really easy like for the production.
So here's a big question though, is everything so far you've mentioned, like you've worked really well with Mark, his team really seems on the ball, and even for things like the music, you were able to help pull in someone who you thought could capture things quite well. Was there anything in the film that you felt was very difficult to convey from the game or from your vision?
From the game, I think some of that still remains to be seen because, like I said, we're still in post-production, and the editing and stuff like that hasn't really gotten underway. Actually, no, that's a lie. I'm sure that Mark is. I'm sure he's been spending every free moment over the last week or so probably manically editing, because he's an obsessive madman.
I saw his announcement video where he just had the bags under his eyes. Yeah.
No, the level that dude works at is like beyond. Like, so Andrew was on set for a few days also. And it's really cool. He was actually on set with some portable equipment writing music as he's watching the scenes happen and stuff, which was really neat. But so yeah, he was there too. And so Andrew is a extremely driven, hardworking person. I am an extremely driven, hardworking person. We were both like, we don't understand how that dude is still standing. Because like he's working these brutal 12-hour days where he's just I don't think there's a single shot in the movie where he is not on camera. And doing some really intensive, like emotionally and physically intensive scenes sometimes. And then for multiple takes, and then he has to snap out of that and go into director mode between them while still like remaining in character. And he has to deal with what was, by all accounts, from every department I talked to, one of the hardest shoots that they've ever worked on. Not in terms of like drama or anything, just in terms of like the enormity of the task that they had to. It was just a really challenging situation to try and figure out how does lighting work, how does camera work, how does all this stuff work. So yeah, that he's really, it's incredible how hard he is able to work, and also for the entire 2 months that we were shooting, I didn't see him lose his cool for a second. He was always extremely pleasant and patient with everyone, even while things sometimes were going horribly wrong, and it's like the time is, not on our side, and it's like we have to rush to get this done, and this. So, yeah, it's really unsurprising to me that when he finally did his, I'm back video, he looked like he had been through a war. Well, honestly, when you see some of the scenes in the final movie, he almost has been through a war, just some of that stuff.
I am so interested. Okay, small mild thing here, just to tie things nicely together into like a... So, should viewers stay after the credits?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Although, that editing hasn't... I don't know. I'm personally not a big fan of after credit scenes. I think that by the time the credits roll, you should have your story wrapped up. But Mark may feel differently. I don't know.
I know some people love their stingers.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you can have a stinger with just as much emotional weight before the credits.
Yeah, that
personally.
is fair. No, I personally think it's like a tool to make sure people stay and actually see who worked on the movie.
Yeah, probably.
But yeah, that's I think the gist of my questions from it. It sounds like you had a lot of fun working on this endeavor and sort of getting
Yeah.
this made.
It was a probably a once in a lifetime experience for someone like me. All the guys there, of course, they're all working crew. This is their job, and a lot of them I talk to, they're like, "Yep, I'm off to do another one after this." But for me, it's like being able to be on a movie set and see how all that worked. Probably not, probably not a chance that I'm gonna have at least that often in the future, possibly ever again. And also to see something that I started coming to life, just that quality and done with a crew of people that, from what I could tell, was pretty unusually awesome. There wasn't a lot of like the nastiness happening that you would get having a lot of the drama that can show up. It sounds like everyone was pretty cool and everyone worked well together, even with the challenges of what the shoot was. So yeah, it was an awesome experience.
So yeah, that's the Iron Lung questions. So I suppose the only thing I have left to say, since we already actually addressed whether or not you'd try some filmmaking, is do you feel like you're going to be possibly shifting the direction of any of your current projects or what you're going to be focusing on, having now finished this?
No, I don't think so, because I went into this year knowing that it was going to be a crazy year, and I mean, basically that last Chop Goblins update I did, which I basically did while I was on set. That's the last thing that I had planned for this year as far as my own stuff goes. Everything else is just focusing on whatever the movie's gonna end up needing, because there's still stuff to do, and focusing on Gloomwood, and sort of taking it easy creatively, because it is not going to be an easy year with all the other stuff going on.
Yeah, no, that's super fair. In that case, is there just anything else that you want to share with the audience?
No, I don't think so. Not currently. By Gloomwood, I guess. We promise we'd be working on updates, and they will be faster, hopefully, maybe.
I mean,
in
I
the
saw there was a
future,
canon
someday.
thing.
Yes, there's a canon. Yeah, it's very cool. It does canon stuff.
Yeah, time to live out your fantasies of being a Janissary and carrying around a cannon.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess then, to those folks watching, well, you can find Iron Lung alongside Dave's other titles on Steam, and with any luck, you'll be able to catch Iron Lung in theater. Hopefully, after this video is released. I don't want to be that slow in editing. Anywhere else?
I don't know if you can keep up with Mark. I don't know. He's pretty quick at all this stuff. It may be out, who knows, next month. No, it's not going to be out next month.
Is there anywhere else you'd care to send people, though?
Well, I mean, my Twitter, I'm at DuskDev. If you search David Szymanski on Steam, it's David Szymanski. You can find all my other stuff that I've worked on or worked with other people on. And yeah, that about covers it.
In which case, to everyone who's currently watching, thanks for tuning in. If you agree, disagree, or just have something to say, or even just questions about this, feel free to comment. If you have an interest in supporting my efforts to create new indie reviews, interviews, and gaming content, hit the subscribe button and the bell so you know there's a new release. There's also a Discord, links in the description, alongside a Patreon so you can support me do stuff, and also a merch house because I have shirts now, and like a mouse pad, and a coffee mug, which is my lifeblood. So yeah, basically feel free to check out the Crit Hit Cauldron, but otherwise, I'll catch you on the next episode of Crit Hit. Take care till then, folks. Also, thank you for showing up, Dave. Like, I realize you were heckin' busy, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.